After years of playing professional rugby, adjusting to life after retirement is difficult for many players. The same perhaps could be said for the men and women who serve in the military and then decide to move into other areas of interest after their years of dedicated service. The Rugby Business Network has the pleasure of speaking with former Group Captain Commander in the Royal Air Force, Victoria Gosling OBE, who is now Strategic Advisor for the Invictus Games UK Delegation and a custodian of Rugby Centurion, among other organisations she is involved with. Vicky, thank you for joining us to share some of your stories and experiences during and after your years in the military.
My pleasure. It's lovely to be called in.
Well, Vicky, it's impressive that for 21 years of your life you served in the military, specifically in the Royal Air Force, which culminated as a Group Captain Commander of Helicopter Base. What was it about the military that made you so dedicated for so many years, and what were some of the highlight moments for you over these 2 decades?
You know, for me, I had went to university. I did languages. I was a university air squadron. I had a fantastic time doing that. And I just loved the thought of being back in an environment that has comrades, that's quite structured, that's mission orientated. And that played very much to my strengths. So I obviously joined, and then over that 21 years period, I was fortunate to be deployed all over the world. I went on operations, obviously went to war in Iraq, and I learned so much by that. And I learned that the people that, you know, I actually served alongside, they are the sort of people you want to work with. They're similar mentality. They're, you know, as I say, mission orientated, and they get the job done. And you realise very quickly in the military that as an individual, you're insignificant, but with your, you know, teammates and your comrades, then you can achieve so much more. And I just enjoyed that. In terms of highlights, well, I mean, there are many, because I was quite sporty, so I skied for the Air Force. I did sort of triathlon. I played tennis for the Air Force. So I did a lot of sport in my time, as well as obviously going on operations with other people. But the biggest highlight, I would say, would be my role at Royal Air Force Benson, whereby, you know, you have this huge train set and the focus is to get those helicopters in to support Afghanistan. That was its role at the time. And so that was brilliant. I had some amazing executives I worked with, and amazing people right through to, you know, the people on the ground that were doing the hard work. And then from there, I was called to go and be the military project lead for His Royal Highness Prince Harry's Invictus Games. So he effectively went out to America. He came back having seen something called the Warrior Games, which were games for wounded, injured and sick servicemen and women. And he loved it so much, loved the concept, saw the power of sport in recovery, that he wanted to bring it back to the UK and make it much bigger, make it international. And we scoped that out and obviously ended up with the first Invictus Games in London. And I was seconded by the military to go and do that. And then I took a sabbatical to go and take the games on a global platform and take them to Orlando, take them back to the States with an international audience. And obviously by that stage we had 16 nations participating. We had 10 different sports. We had 500 competitors. So it was pretty big and superb fun. So, I mean, I've had a hugely varied career with lots of highlights, but they were probably 2 pivotal ones for me.
Brilliant. Well, before we speak about the Invictus Games, I have to mention that in 2014, you were appointed as an officer of the Order of the British Empire in the Queen's Birthday Honours List for your commitment to the RAF and to adaptive sports. Can you touch on specifically what you did for adaptive sports in the military? It sounds interesting, and you must have done a fantastic job in order to receive an OBE for it.
Thank you. So effectively, I'd spent obviously time out in Iraq, and then that really opens your eyes as to the true, you know, dangers of war. And I actually had some comrades who were injured, and I went to go and visit them in somewhere called Headley Court, which is our recovery centre. And it was there, having seen them, a couple of guys that had lost both legs, playing sitting volleyball, that I too had seen. This is prior to the Invictus Games. I too had seen the power of sport, in that I saw these guys, I saw the sparkle coming back, I saw the banter on the sitting volleyball court, and I decided that it was really important that we did something about this. So I helped to set up something called Combined Services Adaptive Sports, whereby I had a number of facilities that belonged to the military adapted. So I was the Commodore of a water sports centre at the time, so I looked to have that adapted to host adaptive sporting events for military personnel. And then I did the same with the tennis centre, whereby I changed the RAF tennis centre into being an adaptive tennis centre facility so we could do wheelchair tennis. And then basically went around the different services, be it the Marines, the Navy, the Army, or the Air Force. And if they had the better facilities and have more opportunity in terms of finance to have the centres adapted, then we set about making that happen, so that those comrades who've been injured in war had an opportunity to continue with their sport, albeit, with adaptations. But they could do that sport in the comfort of their own sort of military surroundings, with their own military comrades, and give them some form of normalisation again. So that's effectively what I did.
Wow, incredible. And most certainly deserving of that OBE. Well, Vicky, you took the decision in 2013 to no longer be actively involved in the military, if you want to put it that way. What led you to the decision to take a step back from active duty, and what sort of effect did it have on you?
I was lucky in the sense that I got pulled out to go and do the Invictus Games project lead. So that was the time when I came out, then helped putting the game, effectively spearheading the games. So that kind of gave me the separation. And once I had done that, and then was subsequently asked to go into the chief executive role, I saw that I could offer more. But what I will say is that even though, I had almost another mission to then follow through with, it was quite hard, because transitioning from the military is like literally leaving your family home, because everything about it, you become accustomed to wearing the uniform, you become accustomed to speaking the same language. You just don't have to explain yourself to one of your comrades, because you tend to think along the same lines and you just get the job done. When you come out as such, I purely took that decision because somebody else kind of made that for me by pulling me through into doing the Invictus Games. When I made the decision to actually sign the paperwork off, it was, it's really tough, I'll be honest with you, but I did see that I could probably now give more back by not serving. But I did miss it. The first 12 months were quite were tougher than I expected.
Well, you have not completely moved away from the military, Vicky, because as we've been chatting, you went on to become the military executive lead group captain for the Invictus Games in 2014, then CEO of the 2016 Games, and now, as I've mentioned, strategic advisor for the UK Delegation. It is a rather interesting story, which you touched on briefly, of how you were personally approached to offer your services and expertise to the Invictus Games. Could you share that with our listeners?
That very much came about because of what I had already done in the adaptive, the military adaptive sporting world. So when His Royal Highness came back from America and wanted to put this concept into a reality on an international spectrum, I was very much a natural point of call because I had already formulated some experience within that area. So I could, let's say, hit the ground running with the concept. So I was effectively called in to have a look at the scoping study and to see how we could turn, the concept that Prince Harry had seen in America into a reality in London. I think I received a call in June 2013, and we had hosted the London Olympics in 2012. So we were in a really good place whereby we could call upon, the board who had effectively run the Olympics, and we could also go to the mayor in London and ask to use the facilities, the Olympic facilities. So it was brilliant because it was less than 12 months after the Olympics that he had returned with this concept. And then it was a case of, I had to visit all of the nations that we wished to participate. And just to explain, the nations that we chose to participate were the nations that had fought in Afghanistan or Iraq alongside us. So we had a mantra of we train together, we fight together, and now here on the sports pitch, we recover together. So that was the mantra we used. So I was then responsible for visiting each of those nations to explain what the concept was and to encourage them to formulate a team to come and compete in London. That was how I became involved.
And the rest, as they say, is history. Well, for those that might not be entirely familiar with the Invictus Games, as you have mentioned, it is an international sporting event for wounded, injured and sick servicemen and women, and is the brainchild of Prince Harry. 3 games have taken place so far. The 4th one is coming up in October this year in Australia. How have preparations been coming along?
The preparations coming along really, really well. I was speaking with their chief executive now, a guy called Patrick Kidd, who's ex-British Army. Everything is in hand, and it's a fantastic setting again to hold the games because they're using, their previous Olympic facilities, and they've just got a great team together, but a wonderful country to be able to put them into. So I think there's a lot of excitement building up for October this year.
Looking forward to that. Well, among the various sports events that are on offer during the Invictus Games, wheelchair rugby is one of them. From what you've witnessed, Vicky, over your years involved with the Games, how popular has this sport become?
Oh, well, I would say in terms of the team sports, it is the most popular.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's absolutely the most popular. People love it. I guess it's an opportunity to kind of get rid of some sort of pent-up feeling. It's a time to demonstrate yourself. It's a sport. It's fairly aggressive. I mean, when you watch it, it's really aggressive, but thoroughly enjoy it. It's quite skillful, but it's also incredibly robust. And in fact, in 2014, we had an exhibition match whereby Prince Harry himself took part, which was great fun. And then we had another sort of exhibition match both in Orlando and then clearly in Toronto. And in fact, it was through my exposure to, the wheelchair rugby and meeting Gavin Verheugens and John Schmidt that I saw the synergy between the military and rugby. And obviously became involved in the Centurions.
Well, that leads in perfectly to my next question, Vicky, which is about Rugby Centurions. Last year, October 2017, you became a custodian. Before the launch took place in London not too long ago, the Rugby Business Network had the pleasure of speaking with former Springbok captain John Smith, who is a managing custodian of this unique initiative. Tell us what your role entails and what attracted you to the Rugby Centurions.
I've always had an interest in rugby in general, but a few years ago I was really fortunate to mix with some of our great England players and realised that I had a lot in common in the way that we spoke, in the way that we thought, in terms of being mission orientated, in terms of, relying on your team, in terms of leadership. It was really interesting to find that I suddenly became quite, my inner circle became very much, case of rugby players. So, and it's because of the straightforwardness, I think, of the way that they operate. And so I had an interest there anyway. And I also felt there was a huge synergy in terms of when you leave the military, you kind of lose your identity, you lose your, place in the pecking order, you lose your uniform, and you lose that camaraderie and the way of just thinking. And, speaking with a couple of the guys, it's the same feeling, when they stop playing for one reason or another, be it through injury or retirement, then they again also lose their, their identity. They take off their rugby shirt. They don't have that regular contact with their teammates and go from being mission orientated and getting that ball over the line and working with the team to do so to kind of floundering a little bit. And I felt a real synergy across there. So I met with John Smith and I met with Gavin, and we talked about how, they'd formulated this amazing concept called the Rugby Centurions, whereby they wanted to use, this particular group to really harness the power of rugby and, positively promote social impact. So I looked at that with them, and we started developing concepts whereby that particular group of individuals could really have a positive social impact, be that in grassroots sport, be that through leadership, be that through transitioning from rugby or just player welfare. So that's where they brought me in to really have a look at that. and to help take that concept forward and to take the brand and really, put it onto a global platform. I'll be spearheading that, sort of the Rugby Centurions for them, in particular sort of from the UK side.
Fantastic. Well, as I mentioned, Rugby Centurions was launched last year. What are some of the upcoming events the rugby community should be aware of, and what are some of the goals that have been set out for this year?
So one of the goals that we've actually set out is effectively a Rugby Centurion leadership program, so junior leadership program, which is all about, leadership on and off the pitch, whereby we effectively use some of the military leadership skills and some of the military boys and girls that I've obviously come across that are phenomenal in teaching those leadership skills, and combined with the rugby skills of leadership and obviously some of the biggest, best icons in the world of rugby to promote leadership and mindfulness and teamwork with the junior, with youths effectively, probably youths that won't naturally or be able to access such courses through life. So really helping with that sort of youth age 13 through 18 in gaining some form of leadership skills and gaining some form of, identity about themselves really, and then being able to give them further options as they progress in life. So we are looking to launch that program late in the summer this year in London to start with, and then we will be rolling it out across the countries where the Centurions effectively have grown up. So it'll be London to South Africa to Australia onwards. So we have that plan in motion, but we're looking to launch that in the summer.
Wow, and so are we. It sounds absolutely incredible. Now, Vicky, apart from what you do at Rugby Centurions and the Invictus Games, you're a very, very busy person because you are also head of social impact at financial services company Auden and also a director at Sage. What would you say are some of the skills that you have taken from your years in the military and are implementing in the different roles that you have at each organization?
I mean, I really think it's the key core values of the military that become really helpful when you're transitioning out. So it's integrity, it's teamwork, it's loyalty, it's being able to cope in adversity really, and navigating risk. And very much at the forefront is leadership. So understanding how do you inspire people to follow you rather than requiring them to follow you? How do you engender that esprit de corps that you have in the military that makes people want to do something, for the better of others? So I think you learn that really quickly, as I said earlier. As an individual, you're insignificant, and you realise that really quickly in the military. And it's so important to take your team with you and to exploit their talents. So you have to have selfless commitment. You have to be able to understand, everybody within the team, everybody has a positive attribute, and it's a case of finding the positive attribute and really exploiting it to the benefit of what it is that you're trying to achieve. So it's those skill sets really that I think have come before and really helped me to then progress outside of the military.
Amazing. Well, finally, Vicky, how can the Rugby Business Network members who are listening get involved and offer their support, particularly for Rugby Centurions?
It's very much a case of being able to, see where they can offer, it could be employment opportunities, it could be financial support for the junior leadership program. Just in terms of supporting events that we will have coming up, I think would be really important as well. And just generally, I think it's either, being there supporting, it's following the Facebook page, which we will really be kickstarting into this year as soon as we get more activity coming up. And, really, as I've already said, it could be anything from tech support to employment support, giving support, really. I'm sure that as these programs progress, it'll be quite apparent where they can support.
So stay on the lookout for all those developments coming up in the next few months. Well, Vicky, you certainly are one extremely busy person, and it has been fascinating to hear how your many years in the military has influenced your chosen career paths afterwards, and that you are making such a difference in each of the organizations you are involved with. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us at the Rugby Business Network.
My absolute pleasure, and thank you for everything you're doing as well.